You think this is funny? Run!
License and registration, please.
I've done nothing wrong.
An elderly black biker, Earl Johnson, sets out on his Harley for a peaceful ride, only to be pulled over by two racist cops who accuse him of reckless driving. What begins as a routine stop spirals into brutality, humiliation, and an attempt to silence him forever. As Earl struggles for breath, Officer Daniels, a conflicted cop witnessing the abuse, begins questioning his loyalty to the badge versus his humanity. A teenager records the scene, the video spreads, and the community rises in outrage. The courthouse becomes a battlefield of truth versus cover-up, where silence, fear, and betrayal give way to resilience, exposure, and resistance. Earl, scarred but unbroken, confronts his oppressors with dignity, while Daniel stands against his own brothers in blue. In the end, the abusive cops are led away in handcuffs. The community rallies around Earl, and poetic justice unfolds. The truth cannot be erased. The breath they tried to steal becomes the voice that changes everything. The engine's low rumble echoed through the quiet Sunday streets. Earl Johnson, 68 years old, leaned back on his Harley, leather vest creasing with each breath of wind. For him, this was church. The open road, the clean air, the rhythm of tires rolling steady. A few white neighbors watering lawns glanced up, stiff-faced. Their eyes lingered on the black man astride a chrome beast, his salt and pepper beard trailing from under his helmet. Earl had seen those looks before. 40 years of riding hadn't dulled their edge, but he smiled anyway. Freedom wasn't theirs to give. Old man still thinks he's a biker, someone muttered from a driveway. Earl ignored it. He'd learned long ago that silence spoke louder than argument. The Harley growled as he turned down Willow Creek Avenue, a neighborhood where he wasn't welcome but had every right to ride. That's when he noticed the glint of blue and red in his mirrors. A patrol car. Then another. His chest tightened. He wasn't speeding. His license was clean. His tags up to date, still he knew. The siren wailed once. A command. Earl pulled the Harley to the curb, engine idling low, heart thumping steady. He removed his gloves slowly, deliberately, black hands visible, palms open. A voice barked through the loudspeaker. "Driver, shut the engine off." "Hands where I can see them." Earl flicked the kill switch. The Harley went quiet, leaving only the oppressive silence of manicured lawns and watching eyes. Two officers stepped out. Sunglasses, pale faces, heavy hands resting near holsters. The taller one sneered. "Reckless driving, huh? Didn't think we'd notice." Earl's jaw flexed. "I was under 35. You can check the dash cam if you like." The shorter cop circled the Harley, smirking. "Bike like this doesn't belong on these streets." "Scaring folks," Earl inhaled steady. "It's a public road, officer." Curtains twitched. A woman pulled her child back from the window. Earl felt their eyes but kept his own on the men before him. "Step off the vehicle," the taller cop ordered. Earl nodded, slow. His boots touched pavement. The Harley gleamed in the sun, silent witness. "You live around here?" the short one asked. Earl's tone stayed calm. "South Side. Been riding through this county since before you were born." A smirk. Must have missed the part where reckless driving is a tradition. The taller cop leaned close. "License. Now." Earl handed it over with steady hands. The narration hung in the air like a verdict. For some men, skin was evidence enough. Age was no shield. Respect earned over decades meant nothing when prejudice wrote the script. The taller officer scanned the license, lips curling. "Earl Johnson," he said mockingly. 68. "Shouldn't you be in a rocking chair instead of terrorizing the streets?" Earl met his gaze. His voice was quiet, unbroken. "I ride because I'm free. That's all there is to it." The shorter cop chuckled darkly. "Free, huh?" "Not today." The chapter closed on the sound of a pen scratching against the ticket pad. But Earl knew this. The pen scraped slowly against the ticket pad. But the taller officer wasn't writing much. His grin told the truth. This was no traffic stop. Earl Johnson stood still beside his Harley, helmet tucked under his arm. His heart thudded steady, but not from guilt. He'd lived long enough to recognize the game. When cops weren't chasing justice, they were chasing control. Reckless driving, the tall officer repeated loudly, for the neighbors peeking through blinds, elderly driver swerving through residential streets. Earl's voice was calm, measured. Sir, I stayed in my lane. Under the limit. You can check the odometer, the shorter officer cut him off with a laugh. Oh, he knows the law, huh? Got himself a lawyer's tongue. They circled him like sharks, one in front, one behind. Earl exhaled slow. He shifted slightly, tapping his leather vest. The tiny body cam clipped inside was live. Recording everything, he raised his chin. This is being documented. The taller one scoffed. Sure it is. He leaned closer, squinting at Earl's vest. You think anyone's gonna believe some old biker's word over ours? The shorter one added, Hell, we could tow this heap and nobody'd ask why. He slapped the Harley's seat with mock affection. Earl's jaw tightened, but his tone stayed even. You're supposed to serve and protect, not harass. That got a laugh. A cold, brittle sound. The tall officer stepped forward close enough that Earl could smell the stale coffee on his breath. Don't lecture me about my job. Step away from the bike. Earl obeyed slowly, boots scraping against the curb. Curtains fluttered again. A man muttered across the street. Bet he was speeding. Another voice whispered back, Doesn't look like it. Yet no one moved. The shorter cop tapped his baton against the chrome handlebars. You like this bike, huh? Lot of pride in it? Earl's throat felt dry, but he answered steady. It's mine. Paid for with 30 years of work at the plant. Every dent, every mile, earned. The tall one smirked. Nice story. Shame if it ended up in the impound lot. Silence pressed down on the street. Earl clenched his fist, then released it. He refused to give them the satisfaction of anger. Finally, he said, If you're writing a ticket, then write it. If not, let me ride. The tall cop's smile vanished. His hand shot out, gripping Earl's jacket. You don't tell me how to do my job. The short one barked, hands on the bike. Now. Earl spread his palms wide, resting them gently on the Harley's cool metal. His reflection glared back at him from the gas tank. Weary eyes in a face lined by years of battle. The narration cut sharp. They wanted submission, not safety. They wanted fear, not compliance. His calm was the one weapon they couldn't stand. The tall cop shoved him suddenly. Earl stumbled against the bike, his ribs colliding with steel. Pain shot through his side, but he caught himself. From a distance, a phone camera clicked on. A teenager crouched behind a hedge, lens aimed steady. Earl steadied his voice. You don't have to do this, the tall one sneered. You people never learn. The shorter one chuckled, looking around at the silent houses. Reckless driving, resisting orders. That's enough reason. Ain't that right, partner? Damn right, Earl inhaled deeply. He was tired. Tired of 40 years of traffic stops that weren't about traffic. Tired of proving humanity in the face of badges and guns. But his voice came out strong, quiet, unbroken. I'm not resisting. I'm standing. The tall officer jerked his arm hard, spinning him toward the curb. Not for long. Earl's Harley rocked, nearly toppling, before he steadied it with his boot. For a brief second, his reflection in the chrome looked like a warrior, bruised, but unbowed. The narration whispered the game was escalating, and they didn't know they were already losing. The tall officer's grip tightened on Earl's jacket. His knuckles whitened, jaw clenched, hands behind your back. Now. Earl turned his head slightly, voice steady. I've broken no law. The shorter cop moved closer, cuffs already swinging from his belt. Don't argue. You fit the profile. Earl let out a slow breath. And what profile is that? The short one smirked. You know? Earl's silence cut sharper than words. He raised his wrists slowly, deliberately, showing compliance. The cuffs clicked shut, too tight. Metal bit into skin. The tall cop shoved him forward against the Harley. The bike rocked violently, then tipped, chrome clashing against pavement. Earl winced as his ribs met steel, then concrete. Pain ripped through his chest, but his voice remained calm. You just damaged my bike. The tall officer laughed. Your bike? Won't be yours after today. From behind the hedge, the teenager whispered into his phone. Keep recording. Don't stop. The red light blinked steadily. Every insult, every shove, captured. Earl twisted his neck toward the tall cop. His voice was quiet, almost conversational. I told you earlier. This is all being recorded, the officer barked a laugh. Yeah? And who's gonna watch it? Your biker buddies? The short one chimed in. Court'll side with us. Always does. Earl's lip bled from where he'd hit the curb, but his eyes burned steady. "You think justice is yours to own," he said softly. "But truth has its way." The tall cop jerked him upright, furious. "You talking back to me, old man?" Earl looked him dead in the eye. "No, I'm talking through you." The short one barked a laugh. Damn, he thinks he's some philosopher. He shoved Earl's shoulders, sending him stumbling. Earl dropped hard onto the pavement, palm scraping raw against concrete. The teenager gasped quietly. His phone shook, but he steadied it. The video zoomed in, catching the moment Earl hit the ground. The tall cop leaned over, pressing a knee into Earl's back. "Still feel free now, huh?" Earl's breath came heavy. His chest was crushed beneath the weight, but he managed. "My freedom doesn't come from you." The narration sliced through the silence. They thought force could erase dignity. But dignity, once chosen, cannot be stolen, only revealed. The short cop knelt, rifling through Earl's saddlebags. "What we got here? Guns, drugs? Something to make this worth our time?" He pulled out nothing but a folded jacket, a spare toolkit, and Earl's inhaler. He tossed them aside with a scoff. "Pathetic," Earl wheezed, his cheek pressed to the ground. "That inhaler? I need that." The short one kicked it further out of reach. "Later. If you behave." Earl coughed, pain searing his chest, but his voice still carried steel. "Every second you're burying yourselves deeper," the tall officer hissed in his ear. "You don't tell me about consequences." From the sidewalk, blinds snapped open wider. A woman raised her phone cautiously, trembling. She whispered to her husband, "Should we call someone?" He muttered back, "Don't, they'll come after us." The tall officer yanked Earl's arm higher, cruelly twisting the cuffed wrist. Earl gasped, his body jolting with pain. "Gut, you're breaking it." "Then stop resisting." "I'm not resisting." "Yes, you are." "That's what the report will say." The teenager's voice cracked as he whispered into his phone. Live streaming now. Look what they're doing to him." His comment feed flooded with shocked reactions. Earl's vision blurred, pavement spinning under him. But somewhere in his chest a stubborn flame refused to go out. He whispered, half to himself, half to them, "You'll answer." The street had grown unnaturally still. Earl's Harley lay on its side, chrome-scarred, while he remained pressed against the pavement. His breath came shallow, raspy, but it wasn't only the cops who saw. Behind curtains, across porches and doorways, the neighborhood was watching. A woman whispered to her husband from behind a screen door. "He's just an old man. Why are they treating him like that?" The husband muttered, "Stay out of it. You don't want trouble with the police." The woman's eyes lingered on Earl's bent frame. "But it isn't right." He pulled her back gently. "Right doesn't matter if they come after us next." The door clicked shut. From the curb, the short cop crouched, rifling through Earl's saddlebags again. "Nothing but junk," he muttered, tossing out a folded jacket. Thought for sure he'd be carrying. The tall one pressed his knee harder into Earl's back. "They always carry." Earl groaned, whispering through clenched teeth, "Not me." "Never have," the short one smirked. "Yeah? Doesn't matter. Our word says you did." From behind the hedge, the teenager's hands shook as he whispered into his phone. "They're lying. You can see it. They're lying." His livestream comment scrolled fast. "Keep filming. Don't let them see you. This is how they always do it." A few houses down, a little girl tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Why are they hurting the old man, Mama?" Her mother's lips trembled. "Come inside, baby." But he didn't do anything. The mother looked away, voice cracking. "Please, just come inside." The child stared at Earl one last time before the door shut with a hollow slam. The tall cop bent low near Earl's ear. "Funny, isn't it? Whole street watching, and nobody's lifting a finger. Know why? 'Cause they know you're guilty." Earl coughed, shaking his head weakly. "No, they're afraid. Fear keeps them silent." The short cop chuckled. "Same difference." The narration crept in, sharp as glass. Injustice doesn't need applause. It only needs silence. And silence was abundant. The tall officer grabbed Earl's chin roughly, forcing him to look up toward the houses. "See that? Curtains drawn. Doors shut. Not one soul gonna help you." Earl's lips cracked into the faintest smile. "Doesn't take all of them." "Just one," the short cop scoffed. "Yeah? Who? Some kid with a phone?" He laughed, not realizing the boy's stream had already climbed past 1,000 viewers. From a nearby porch, an older man muttered into his coffee, "This is wrong. his wife hissed. Then do something. He stared at the cops' guns, the badges shining in the sun, and lowered his head. Can't. The tall cop jerked Earl's cuffed arms higher, cruelly twisting his shoulders. You think anyone's coming? Nobody's stupid enough to get in the way, Earl wheezed, fighting for air. They don't have to step in. They just have to see, the short cop leaned in, sneering. Nobody's gonna see, old man. We write the report, we control the story. Earl's chest heaved as he forced the words out. Stories don't stay buried forever. The Harley's broken mirror reflected the silent crowd in fragments. Faces pressed to windows, eyes darting, lips sealed, children hushed by parents. Neighbors rooted in fear. Phones lifted hesitantly, then lowered. The narration carried a bitter truth. Silence is not neutral. Silence sides with power. And every quiet witness became a piece of the chain tightening around Earl's chest. The teenager behind the hedge clenched his fists, whispering fiercely into his phone. I'm not shutting this off. I don't care what happens. They'll see. Everyone's gonna see. Earl's cheek pressed harder to the pavement, but his voice rose, raw and defiant. Even one voice is enough. The tall cop spat near his ear. Not today, it isn't. The chapter closed on the soft sound of the little girl's muffled voice through the glass door, asking again, Why are they hurting him, Mama? And the silence that followed was heavier than the knee on his back. Earl's breaths came short, ragged. His chest rattled with each inhale as if the pavement itself was crushing his lungs. He whispered, barely audible, Inhaler. Need my inhaler. The short cop glanced at the small plastic tube lying a few feet away, kicked aside earlier. He smirked. Oh, that? What is it? Some kind of trick. Earl coughed violently. His shoulders shook beneath the tall officer's weight. It's real, please. The tall one leaned in, voice dripping with mockery. Don't play games with us, old man. You're fine. Earl gasped, voice cracking. Asthma. Can't breathe, the short cop chuckled. How convenient. Suddenly can't breathe once you're cuffed? You rehearsed this, huh? From behind the hedge, the teenager's voice quivered as he spoke into his phone. He's not faking. You can hear him. They're letting him suffocate. Comments scrolled in frantic bursts. Call an ambulance. This is attempted murder. Don't stop filming. The tall officer pressed his knee harder into Earl's spine. You want air? Then stop resisting, Earl rasped. I'm not resisting. That's what they all say. A woman on her porch cried out suddenly, unable to hold back. Give him the damn inhaler. He can't breathe. The short cop snapped his head toward her. Ma'am, step back inside before we charge you with obstruction. She froze, hands trembling. Slowly she retreated, shutting the door with a hollow thud. The narration sliced cleanly. Fear had a sound. It was doors closing while a man choked on concrete. Earl coughed again, body convulsing. His lips turned pale. The short cop muttered, He's putting on a show. The tall one snorted. Yeah, and we're the audience. They laughed. Sharp, cruel, echoing off the neat white houses. The teenager finally shouted from his hiding spot. Stop, you're killing him. The tall cop spun, eyes narrowing. Who the hell's there? The boy ducked lower, phone still raised, live stream still running. His whisper was frantic. Stay quiet. Stay quiet. Earl's vision blurred. He felt the world tilt, the Harley's gleam flickering at the edge of his sight. He whispered weakly. Help. Someone. The tall cop yanked his arm higher. Shut your mouth, Earl cried out in pain. His body spasmed and then went frighteningly still. For a beat, silence hung. The short cop muttered uneasily. He's not moving. The tall one sneered. He's fine. Just trying to scare us. But his voice had lost a sliver of its certainty. From the hedge, the teenager whispered fiercely into his mic. Look. He's not moving. They're killing him. The comment feed exploded. Someone call 911 now. This is on video. They can't cover it up. Tag the news outlets. A faint wheeze escaped Earl's lips. His chest rose shallow, barely. His voice cracked, almost broken. Inhaler. The short cop sneered. Still pretending, huh? The tall one barked. Enough. We'll call an ambulance when he learns to cooperate. A neighbor finally stepped onto the sidewalk, phone in hand. His voice trembled but carried. I'm recording too. You're choking him! The tall cop turned sharply. Sir, back inside or you'll be next. The man froze. His wife screamed from the porch, "Don't! Don't get involved!" He lowered his phone, shame flooding his face, and retreated. The narration landed heavy. Cowardice doesn't always look like cruelty. Sometimes it looks like turning away. Earl's body jerked suddenly, coughing hard, gasping for air. He croaked, "This... all recorded," the tall officer hissed, pressing down harder. "Shut up, old man." In the distance, the faint wail of sirens broke through the still air. "Back up," the short cop smirked. "Looks like our friends are here." "About time," the tall one sneered. "Good. More witnesses on our side," the boy behind the hedge whispered, voice trembling but steady. "No, more witnesses on his." He adjusted his phone, zooming in close on Earl's face. Pale, sweat dripping, eyes half shut. The tall cop barked to his partner, "Help me get him up before they arrive. He needs to look like he fought back." The short one grabbed Earl's shoulders, yanking him roughly upright. Earl's head lolled, his body weak. The teenager whispered fiercely, "They're staging it. Look, they're trying to make it look like he resisted." Earl's lips moved faintly. Words barely escaped. "You can't hide. Truth." The tall cop slapped him across the face. "Quiet." The sirens grew louder, closer, wrapping the street in shrill anticipation. Neighbors peered again through blinds, torn between fear and the sense that something irreversible was happening. The tall cop hissed at Earl's limp body. "You think this changes anything? You'll be another nobody. Another file." Earl wheezed, blood on his lip, but his eyes glinted faintly. "Files can burn. Truth. Lives," the sirens wailed closer still. Tires screeched. The teenager's scream caught the moment. 2 new cruisers pulling up, doors flying open. Backup had arrived. The narration carved the scene in stone. The backup cruiser screeched to a stop. Sirens cut, leaving an eerie hush broken only by Earl's shallow gasps. 2 officers stepped out. One was thick-set, his jaw square, eyes sharp. The other, younger, maybe mid-20s, had hesitation written across his face. His name tag read Daniels. The tall cop stood quickly, adjusting his uniform like a man caught red-handed yet daring anyone to call him out. "About time you showed." The thick-set officer frowned, glancing at Earl, who lay cuffed, face pressed to the pavement, barely moving. "What the hell happened here?" The short cop scoffed. "Resisted arrest. Had to use force. He'll be fine." Daniel's eyes lingered on Earl's lips, cracked, dry, whispering something faint. He crouched slightly. "Sir, can you hear me?" Earl's reply came as a rasp, a ghost of sound. Inhaler." Daniels turned sharply. "He needs medical attention." The tall cop barked, "He's faking it." "Don't fall for it." The thick-set officer frowned. "Doesn't look fake to me." The short cop snapped, "You rookies always get soft. This one's just buying time." Behind the hedge, the teenager whispered furiously into his phone, "They're split. Look at the young one. He knows the truth." The comment feed lit up. "That's Daniels. He's new. Pray he doesn't cave. One good cop could save him." Earl coughed violently, body jerking. His face turned bluish around the lips. Daniels shouted, "He can't breathe!" "Where's his inhaler?" The short cop kicked the plastic tube further into the gutter. "There, out of reach." Daniels' eyes narrowed. "You kicked it away?" The tall officer stepped forward, chest puffed. "Daniels, stand down. We're handling it." Daniels hesitated. His heart pounded, his voice cracked but steady. "No, you're not. You're suffocating him." The thick-set officer muttered low, uneasy. "We're all being recorded, look." He nodded toward the hedge, the faint glow of a phone still filming. The tall cop snarled. "That kid? I'll deal with him next." The teenager whispered into his mic, voice shaking with rage. "You hear that? He just threatened me. They know they're being recorded, and they still don't care." Earl wheezed again, eyes half shut. He murmured, "Their son. Don't let them win." Daniels froze at the word son. His jaw tightened. He leaned down, hand brushing Earl's shoulder gently. "I won't, I promise," the tall cop exploded. "Daniels, step back now or you'll regret it." Daniels rose slowly, his face pale but set. "With respect, sir, I'm not watching a man die." The thick-set officer shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we should call it in. Get an ambulance," the short cop scoffed. "You'd throw us under the bus over this faker?" Daniel shot back, fire in his tone. "He's not faking. Look at him. He's cyanotic. He's dying in front of you." The tall cop shoved a finger into Daniel's chest. "One word from you and you're finished. You'll never wear this badge again." Daniels didn't flinch. He whispered, but his words cut like glass. "Better no badge than blood on my hands." From the hedge, the teenager nearly sobbed into his phone. "You heard that? He said it." He's standing up. Oh my God. The comments flew faster. Daniels is the crack in the wall. Protect him. They'll go after him next. This video is history in the making. Earl's head lolled weakly toward Daniels. His lips trembled into a faint smile, almost invisible. He whispered, broken but clear. "Good man." The tall cop roared, snapping. "Fine, you want to play hero? Then you deal with him. But don't cry when IA comes for you." He stepped back, gesturing mockingly. Daniels dropped to his knees, gently tilting Earl's head, lifting his chest slightly. "Stay with me, sir, please." The thick-set officer muttered, conflicted. "Daniels, you're making a scene." Daniels snapped. The scene was already made. "I'm trying to undo it," Earl gasped, tiny bits of air scraping through his throat. Inhaler." Daniels' eyes darted, spotting the tube in the gutter. He leapt up, snatched it, shook it, then pressed it to Earl's lips. "Breathe. Please breathe." Earl inhaled weakly. A faint wheeze rattled through, but his chest lifted a fraction more. Daniels whispered, "That's it." "Come on." The tall cop spat. "Pathetic. Playing medic for a criminal." Daniels spun, fury breaking through. "A criminal?" He was walking his bike. "You stopped him for being black in the wrong neighborhood." The words hit the street like a gunshot. Silence followed. The short cop's face twisted. "Watch your mouth." The ambulance siren pierced the silence, louder, closer. Blue and red lights danced across the houses, washing the street in pulsing color. Neighbors who had hidden behind curtains now leaned fully out, phones raised, recording every flicker of chaos. The tall cop hissed under his breath, his voice jagged with fury. "Turn those damn cameras off." A woman across the street shouted back, "We don't take orders from you." "Not after what we saw," the short cop sneered. "All of you think you're heroes with your cell phones. You'll see how fast those videos disappear once the department gets them." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Anger sharpening, fear thinning. Daniel stayed crouched beside Earl, keeping the inhaler steady against his lips. His voice was low, urgent. "Easy, just keep breathing. Help is here." Earl's chest lifted shakily, each breath rasping but steadier than before. His eyes fluttered open, clouded but alive. "Don't let them bury this." Daniel squeezed his shoulder. "They won't, not this time." The paramedics rushed forward with a stretcher. One knelt immediately, glaring up at the officers. "What the hell did you do to him?" The tall cop snapped, "Back off. This is a police matter." The paramedic shot back, "No, this is a medical emergency, and you let it get to this point." The crowd cheered faintly, tension cracking into open defiance. From the hedge, the teenager whispered into his mic, his phone still streaming. "They can't control it anymore. Even the medics are calling them out." The live comments exploded. "Paramedic just roasted the cops." "This is evidence and testimony." "Keep filming. Don't let them twist the story." The short cop lunged toward the teen, but 3 neighbors stepped forward, blocking him. "You touch that kid and you'll regret it," a man growled. The officer froze, stunned by the defiance. The crowd's silence was no longer fear. It was resistance. Daniels helped guide Earl onto the stretcher. Earl's voice was weak but sharp with meaning. "Don't let them spin this." Daniels leaned close. "They can't. Too many saw it." The tall cop's radio crackled, dispatch buzzing about civilian complaints, live streams, and calls flooding the department. His jaw tightened. He barked, "Everyone stand down! Disperse or you're obstructing justice." A woman shouted back, "Justice? You almost killed him!" The crowd roared in agreement. The narration cut in, sharp, relentless. Fear had flipped into fury. And fury, once shared, was harder to silence than any single voice. The thick-set officer, the one who'd wavered earlier, whispered urgently to Daniels, "You're digging your own grave. The department doesn't forgive whistleblowers." Daniels' jaw locked. "Then let it bury me. I'm not covering this up." The man shook his head. "You think the union, the brass, the brotherhood, they'll protect you? They'll eat you alive." Daniels looked back at Earl, then at the cameras filming every angle. His voice steadied. "Better to be eaten alive than to rot from the inside." The crowd erupted, voices surging together. "Shame! Shame, the tall cop spun, veins bulging. Enough, you don't get to judge us. But the crowd did. And their judgment carried phones, lenses, microphones, proof that no badge could erase. The paramedics loaded Earl into the ambulance. One of them muttered loud enough for the cameras. He's lucky to be alive. Another minute and he'd be gone. The words landed like a gavel. Final. Undeniable. Daniels climbed halfway into the ambulance, gripping the door. I'm going with him. The tall cop barked, You're staying right here. Daniels turned, voice ringing louder than before, echoing across the street. No, I'm going with him, because I don't trust what you'll say when he can't speak for himself. The teenager gasped into his mic, almost breathless. He's doing it. He's breaking ranks in public. The comments flooded faster. Protect Daniels at all costs. They'll crucify him, but history will remember this. This is the turning point. The ambulance doors slammed shut. Lights flared. It pulled away, carrying Earl Daniels in a storm of unfinished reckoning. The tall cop watched, fists clenched, rage smoldering. This isn't over, he muttered darkly. The short cop leaned in. If that rookie talks, we're done. We've got to shut this down. The thick-set officer's voice trembled barely above a whisper. Maybe it's already too late. The narration fell heavy as the night around them. Cracks widen under pressure. And when the wall starts to crumble, those who built it can't always stop the collapse. The precinct conference room was suffocating. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, throwing pale light on the cluster of officers and brass around the long table. At the head sat Captain Mercer, his jaw tight, eyes like ice. On the wall behind him, a muted TV replayed the live stream. Earl face down on the pavement, Daniels shouting, You stopped him for being black in the wrong neighborhood. No sound, but the captions burned across the screen. Mercer's voice sliced the air. What the hell were you thinking, Daniels? Daniels sat stiff, knuckles white against the chair. I was thinking about a man suffocating under our boots while we stood by. The tall cop leaned forward, smug venom in his tone. He resisted. You lost control. Now you've handed ammunition to every thug with a grudge against us. Daniels shot back. He didn't resist. You assaulted him, on camera, with the whole world watching. The room buzzed. Whispers flitted between officers, some shaking their heads, others glancing nervously at the screen. The short cop sneered. That live stream won't hold up in court. It'll disappear once the lawyers get involved. Mercer slammed his fist on the table. That video has already hit 2 million views. It's on every national outlet. It's not disappearing. The narration cut in, sharp and damning. The department had long relied on silence, sealed reports, and vanished footage. But this time, silence had broken, and the footage multiplied faster than the cover-up machine could spin. Daniels leaned forward. You want the truth buried, but you can't bury millions of witnesses. He almost died because of them. He jabbed a finger toward the tall and short cops. The tall one snapped, You're a traitor. You think the streets will thank you? You'll be alone. No badge, no backup. Daniels' voice wavered but held. Better alone than complicit. Mercer's eyes narrowed. Daniels, do you realize what you've done? You've handed the department's enemies a weapon. Daniels replied, steady now. The only weapon is the truth. And you can't control it anymore. A phone buzzed. An officer at the end of the table glanced at it, pale. Sir, the mayor just called. They're demanding an internal investigation. Full suspension of involved officers. The room froze. The short cop slammed his fist. Suspension? For doing our jobs? Daniels barked back. For abusing your badge. The TV screen behind them flickered. A news anchor spoke. Breaking. Civil rights attorneys are already on scene citing evidence of racial profiling and excessive force. Community leaders demand charges. The Department of Justice has been notified. Every head in the room turned. The narration fell like a verdict. The story was no longer theirs to control. Once spilled into the bloodstream of the nation, truth had its own momentum, and it was ruthless to lies. The tall cop's face twisted. He turned to Mercer. Captain, you can't let them do this. If one rookie's word tears us down, what's left of the shield? Mercer's tone was stone. What's left is survival. The city needs someone to blame. Congratulations, and it's you two. The short cop's mouth dropped open. You're throwing us under the bus? Mercer's gaze was cold. No, I'm throwing you to the wolves. You earned it, Daniels almost smiled, grim, bitter. The system was eating its own. The tall cop roared, "This is betrayal!" Mercer shot back, "No, this is politics." From outside the closed doors came the sound of chanting. The crowd had gathered at the precinct, voices loud enough to seep through the walls. "Justice for Earl! Justice for Earl!" Daniels whispered to himself, almost like a prayer. "They're still out there." The thick-set officer, the one who'd wavered at the scene, spoke for the first time. "I saw what happened. I didn't stop it. That's on me." The tall cop spat. "Don't you start." But the man's voice was heavy with guilt. "I won't lie for you. Not anymore." Daniels turned, meeting his eyes. Then maybe the wall really is cracking. The chanting outside grew louder. The TV showed live footage. Earl, frail but alive, leaving the hospital in a wheelchair. His hand lifted weakly, acknowledging the crowd chanting his name. The reporter's voice cut through. "This story has ignited a national outcry. Protesters demand accountability, and arrests may soon follow." Mercer rubbed his temples, voice low and sharp. "This department is bleeding. And it's your fault." Daniels stood. His voice was quiet but carried in the silence. "No, Captain. It's bleeding because for too long nobody cared who it hurt. Earl survived, and the truth survived with him. That's what you can't stop." The narration closed like a hammer strike. Systems don't fall in one blow. They fracture piece by piece until even those inside can't deny the cracks. And once the truth shines through, no badge is thick enough to block the light. The courtroom buzzed with tension. Cameras flashing as reporters packed every bench. The case wasn't just local anymore. It was national, symbolic, raw. At the plaintiff's table sat Earl Johnson, shoulders hunched, but chin lifted. His body still bore bruises, but his presence carried weight heavier than pain. Beside him stood Attorney Harris, sharp-eyed and unyielding. Across the aisle, the tall and short cops sat rigid in their uniforms, flanked by their union lawyer. Their faces were masks of defiance, but their hands betrayed them, fists clenched, knees bouncing. Daniels sat behind Earl, no longer in uniform. Badge surrendered, but dignity intact. His eyes never left the defendants. The judge's gavel cracked. "Court is in session." Harris rose, her voice steady. "Your Honor, this is not just about one man. This is about a pattern, abuse hidden under the cover of authority. Earl Johnson survived what too many did not, and his voice demands to be heard." She gestured gently to Earl. "He is here today, not as a victim, but as living proof." The defense attorney scoffed. "My clients performed their duty. Mr. Johnson resisted lawful orders, forcing officers to act. This case is nothing more than media hysteria." A murmur of disgust rippled through the gallery. Earl struggled to his feet, gripping the cane at his side. "May I speak, Your Honor?" The judge nodded. "Proceed." Earl turned, not just to the court, but to the cameras, the nation beyond. His voice cracked but carried. "I am 72 years old. I rode that Harley slower than most people drive their cars. I did not resist. I did not endanger anyone. My only crime was being black in a neighborhood they didn't think I belonged in." He paused, breath trembling. "They didn't want safety. They wanted control. They wanted me afraid. But I'm still here." The gallery erupted in soft applause until the judge's gavel restored order. The tall cop leaned to his lawyer, hissing, "He's grandstanding. This won't hold." But Harris smiled faintly, sensing the tide shifting. Daniels was called next. He walked slowly to the stand, adjusting his jacket. Every eye tracked him, half with respect, half with scorn. The defense pounced first. "Officer Daniels, isn't it true that by speaking out you violated department policy and destroyed your own career?" Daniels met the lawyer's gaze. "Yes, and I'd do it again," the lawyer smirked. "So your testimony is nothing more than bitterness from a disgruntled ex-officer?" Daniels leaned forward, voice steady. "No, my testimony is the truth. I watched those men hold down an unarmed elder until he couldn't breathe. I heard them mock his pleas. I saw them kick away his inhaler. That's not procedure. That's cruelty." Gasps rippled through the room. The narration cut sharp. Silence, once a shield for the powerful, was broken, and broken silence spreads louder than lies. Harris approached slowly. "Officer Daniels, why risk everything to testify?" Daniels' voice softened. "Because my oath was to protect, not to protect each other from accountability. If I stayed silent, I'd be no better than them." His words echoed like a bell through the courtroom. The tall cop erupted, unable to contain himself. He's lying. This is all lies! The judge slammed the gavel. Order! One more outburst and you'll be removed, the gallery muttered, eyes narrowing at the outburst. Anger looked a lot like guilt. The prosecution rolled the footage on a screen. Earl gasping, Daniels shouting, neighbors screaming. The moment when the tall cop sneered, "You people never learn," the jury stiffened. Some visibly recoiled. The short cop's face drained of color. Harris's voice cut the silence. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a question of doubt. It is a question of conscience. You saw it. You heard it. What you feel in your chest right now is the truth they tried to bury. Will you let them? The defense sputtered, fumbling through technicalities, procedure, policies. But words fell flat against the raw weight of the footage, the testimony, the broken silence, the narration pressed in. Systems collapse not when struck hardest, but when struck where they are weakest. Truth against denial, humanity against power. Hours later, the jury returned. Guilty. On both counts. Assault under color of authority, civil rights violation. The verdict landed like thunder. Earl closed his eyes, tears slipping down his cheeks. Daniels placed a steady hand on his shoulder. You did it. Earl shook his head weakly. No, we did. The tall cop cursed under his breath, rage boiling. This isn't justice. This is politics. The judge's gavel cracked again. No, this is accountability. The courtroom erupted. Cheers, sobs, chants spilling from benches to hallways to the streets outside. Reporters rushed. The courthouse steps overflowed with voices. Reporters, protesters, neighbors, strangers who had become witnesses to something bigger than one man, bigger than one case. At the center of it all sat Earl Johnson in his wheelchair, sunlight catching the silver of his hair. His cane rested across his lap, his Harley parked nearby, polished by neighbors as if to honor him. Daniels stood beside him, no badge, no uniform, but something steadier. Respect from the crowd. A reporter shoved forward, microphone raised. Mr. Johnson, what does justice mean to you today? Earl's eyes glistened, his voice a low rasp but strong. Justice isn't revenge. Justice is breathing free. Justice is knowing they couldn't silence the truth this time. Applause broke through the crowd. Another reporter turned to Daniels. Officer or former Officer Daniels, what's next for you? Your career in law enforcement is effectively over. Daniels nodded slowly. Then I'll find another way to protect. Maybe not with a badge, but with my voice, with my hands, with my choices. He glanced at Earl. Some oaths don't end when the badge comes off. Across the square, the tall and short cops were escorted out in cuffs, faces twisted with fury as reporters swarmed. Their lawyer barked about appeals, but no one listened. The chants rose louder. No justice, no peace. Justice for Earl. The tall cop shouted, we were betrayed. Daniels called back, calm but unshaken. No, you betrayed the badge long before today. The words landed like a final nail. The narration cut in, deliberate and sharp. Poetic justice is not always dramatic. Sometimes it's simple, the powerful falling under the weight of their own arrogance, while the voices they tried to crush rise louder than ever. The teenager with the phone stepped forward, trembling with pride. Mr. Johnson, I was the one who streamed it. People are calling me a hero. Earl smiled faintly, eyes soft. You're not a hero for holding a phone, son. You're a hero for refusing to look away. The boy's chin lifted, tears threatening. I just wanted people to see. Earl reached for his hand. And because of you, they did. The crowd began to thin as the afternoon sun dipped low, but Earl remained on the steps, gazing at the courthouse, the Harley, the people. Daniels leaned down. You should rest. You've been through enough. Earl chuckled, a gravelly sound. Rest comes later. Today I breathe, and that's victory enough. The narration softened, reflective. One man's survival became a mirror, a reflection of what power can do unchecked and what truth can do when carried by many. Earl's breath, fragile but steady, was more than air. It was resistance, proof, and promise. Weeks later, the news cycle still hummed. The cops' mugshots were plastered across screens. Internal Affairs leaked reports of past complaints ignored, patterns covered up. The department scrambled, promising reform, new oversight, body cams with stricter rules. Critics called it too little, too late. But the crack was permanent. The wall would never look the same. Earl sat on his porch one evening. Harley parked beside him. Daniels visited often, sometimes in silence, sometimes in long talks about futures neither had planned. That night, Daniels asked quietly, "Do you regret it? Any of it?" Earl shook his head. "Regret, no. Pain, yes. Fear, yes. But regret." He looked at the sky, painted gold with sunset. "No, I'm still